Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks Pro. Let's get started.
So welcome to another episode of the Growth Minded Accountants podcast. My name is Lee Reams. I am the founder and CEO of CountingWorks. And today we're going to talk about, we've been doing a series. So if you've gone through the last few podcasts, we did the boomers, we covered Gen X, and we're basically kind of going through the different demographics of different age groups to talk about what is different about them if you're marketing to them and why it's important to use certain tones, certain imagery, certain talking points. And today we're going to talk about millennials. So we're basing this off of a blog article that Rebekah, our co-host, wrote called "Millennials Are All Grown Up. Is Your Tax and Accounting Firm Ready?" So what we're going to talk about here is a story really of trust, transparency, and digital savvy interactions. Rebekah, who is a millennial, so she should have a lot to say about this particular topic. She tried to ruin my Gen X version, by kind of throwing us a ride, but we were pretty good. So I think millennials we're going to nail. So Rebekah, go ahead and say hello, and then we'll get into this.
Hi, everybody. Let's get going.
All right. So what is a millennial? Generally born between the early 1980s to the mid 1990s. They're now in their late 20s to early 40s. So many of them are entering what I would call major life milestones, right? So maybe buying a home, they're starting families, they're launching businesses, they're thinking about saving for college education for their children. They're dealing with perhaps student loans and some other things. So there's a lot of ways that these events, I call it, we basically do a lot of marketing based on life events. So, what are life events that occur within your client base? If you're in a specific niche or vertical or target audience, what are those life events most likely to be happening for those people? And then you create content and messaging around that. So millennials definitely are, I would call ripe and ready for some higher end tax and accounting services. And we want to talk about, how do you embrace them? What are the things that matter to them? Authenticity is a big deal. Being digital, obviously, is a big deal. Transparency, having a purpose, a social impact. It's more than just numbers to them. They want relationships, right? So, how do you deal with that? It's a lot about developing two-way conversations. It's about personalizing the experience. So it's a lot of what we do for our clients at CountingWorks Pro is creating authentic storytelling. Like, how do we position you as a firm to really communicate to this audience? Okay, so now let's jump into the podcast Q&A. So Rebekah, I have seen the shift, obviously, as the millennials are getting older and they have the things we've been talking about, these different needs. What have you seen in their mindset shift that will affect tax and accounting services? And what does this mean for firms that have been doing things, what I'm going to call the old way? Perhaps they've been marketing to boomers or Gen X in a specific way through different channels. And now all of a sudden, you need to start communicating with a new group, a new target audience. So what are those changes? What does that mean to our industry?
Yeah, so I think part of it is in the title of this blog post, that millennials are all grown up. And not only have we seen that in ourselves as a generation, but other older generations also need to see this and start marketing to us in a way that is different. We're not kids anymore. We're not college students. The youngest millennials are in their late 20s. So a lot of them are, starting to have families, getting married, considering home ownership if that's in the cards for them. So there are a lot of different aspects of life going on right now. And the oldest millennials, like you mentioned, Lee, are in their early 40s. And I think turning 40, at least for a lot of us, is kind of a huge mindset shift. Oh my gosh, I'm middle-aged. I need to start planning. I need to start saving for college for my kids. I need to start thinking about retirement seriously. I need to start looking at whatever my financial goals are. But I think it's really important for tax and accounting professionals to realize that we are the first generation to grow up completely in the internet age. We have never known life without the internet. We've never known life without computers. So there is a fairly major marketing shift that occurs between Gen X and millennials that is even different than from between boomers and Gen X, just because of that technology shift that exists.
So let's talk about that. We had mentioned authenticity and trust, transparency, that is the reason a lot of our clients are using pricing and packaging, right? So meaning transparency, where I don't feel I'm just hiring someone at a bottomless pit like a lawyer, and I'm just going to get a bill at the end of the day that who knows what it is. I can go through it. I can see, okay, package A, B, and C. I like package B because it includes everything. But kind of get into a little bit about this whole transparency, authenticity, like showing your true self. I know there's even a trend on LinkedIn right now of, even for the tax and accounting space, people saying, hey, just dress the way you want, don't try to, don't be your true self. And that's, I think, the beginnings of this shift in mindset. I have a different viewpoint on, where that is going, but kind of explain that as far as the millennials and what they value.
Yeah, we really do value authenticity. I think it comes from a lot of different things, but part of it is just that we did grow up in the internet age, and we grew up hearing, internet safety and you can't trust everyone. And we grew up in kind of this era where trust is very important to us and loyalty to brands is very important. I know even in myself, I see extreme brand loyalty. If I love something, I'm all in on it, and I will tell all my friends about it, and I will post on social media about it. And that goes for service providers as well. Dry cleaners, even. I've literally shared my dry cleaner because I love them, and they kind of go above and beyond in doing things. And I think that goes for tax and accounting too. If we're really, really happy with something, we're going to be all in with it, which is great for you as a professional because you can really rely on the millennial generation to share things online and to kind of, if you're authentic with us, we're going to be all in with you. And pricing is huge for multiple reasons. One, just for the transparency factor. We know we're not going to get nickel and dimed at the end of the day. And two, because millennials famously have a lot of student loan debt, a lot of different things like that. And knowing what we're going to pay is important. A lot of millennials live on budgets. And so knowing exactly what you're going to owe to your tax and accounting professional, to an attorney, to anyone is really important to this generation, not just for budgeting purposes, but for the purpose of knowing, okay, I'm not going to get something at the end of the day that's going to shock me or that's going to make me not trust this service provider who I want to have a long-term professional relationship with.
So based on what you're saying, it would seem that your biography, showing pictures of you and your staff, showing your personal life, really reaching out to be a part of a community versus talking to a community or talking down to the community, is what this audience or demographic is going to really resonate with. So, how do you tell a genuine story that will connect with this audience, as a firm? So like, what would you do with, and I know you're doing it with our clients, but, kind of go through the process of how we create a narrative and a personal story for each of our tax and accounting firms.
For sure. And this is a direction that we're really moving here at Counting Works. We are really focused on storytelling, on your narrative, on setting you apart. And that's something that's important for any tax and accounting professional. On paper, in this industry in particular, you kind of run the risk of looking like everyone else if you're not telling your story. But in reality, you are your own person. Your firm is different than any other firm. So the first thing I always urge people to think about is, what personality do you want your firm to have? It's different than any other practice. So make sure you kind of come up with personality traits that if your tax and accounting practice was a human being, what would it be like? Would it be very forward and direct? Would it be super professional? Would it be kind of fun-loving? There's all kinds of different things. And that's going to kind of help you set the stage for how you want your website to look, the stories you want to tell, the copy you want to use. Once you have that down, you can start building a brand identity. And that can be everything from the color scheme you use to your logo to the kind of blogs you post, and make sure all of that aligns. Millennials are going to love something that is very, very cohesive. Brand identity is important to us. We love packaging. We love aesthetics. We love a brand that really is personable and that doesn't feel, like you said, Lee, like it's talking down to us. Let us put ourselves in the shoes of your audience when we come to your website. We want to see ourselves, and we want to understand how you're going to help us and meet us where we are in an engaging way that is also very aesthetically appealing. That's all important to this generation.
So you're saying like a 15-year-old website that just talks about all your designations is not the right way to connect with them personally?
Probably not. I'd probably just bounce from that site.
All right. So And this is also important. I've mentioned this in a few podcasts recently of a lot of influence in our space. Keep talking about in some of the big vendors, Corby, for example, they keep talking about, everything should be moving to tax planning type of relationships, higher end, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 type of fees. And in order to, I think, back that up, you really do need to have a brand and a professionalism that I feel like, I see the value just looking and talking and reading your literature and your information and the way you send your newsletter and the way you establish yourself on social media. But all of this is going to be digital for the millennial side. So let's talk a little bit about technology. What digital tools or strategies do you think are game changers for engaging millennial clients, where they're spending their time?
Millennials care a lot about work-life balance. A lot of us really enjoy the ability to work remotely, to work on the go, to work from coffee shops, that type of thing. So I think one thing you have to remember is that millennials want to be able to access everything from their phones, wherever they are. So if you need a document from me or from anyone in this generation, I want to be able to upload it to my files on my iPhone and send it to you via a portal online, or even, some sort of social media account if it's something that's not super sensitive. I want to be able to talk to you where I am. So I love tax and accounting firms that are on Instagram, that are on TikTok. I can shoot you a question in a DM. I'm not having to send you an email or get on the phone or even get on a meeting. We love texting. We love social media messaging, chat bots on your website. That's huge for us. At Counting Works, we have an AI-powered chat bot that can help people out. That's really important. Anything that's going to be kind of hands off for us in the sense of having to get on the phone or having to do a physical meeting. So technology is critical here, and social media is critical here. We were the first social media generation, and that's where we still are. Lots of different platforms for millennials. We obviously kind of started with MySpace, which is defunct, then moved to Facebook. A lot of millennials are still on Facebook. Instagram is huge with this generation. And then a lot of millennials have moved to TikTok as well.
Yeah, I'm laughing. I can't even get my daughter to text with me anymore. I have to. I'm not on TikTok, thank God, and I'm not on Snapchat, but I have Instagram. So if I Instagram her any DM, she immediately answers. But if I text her, it might be 4 or 5 hours later. So it's interesting, and I appreciate what you're saying with the digital experience, but it's really important, specifically in the tax and accounting space, to have that human in the loop experience. So, what are some best strategies, perhaps using intake forms, for example? So, millennials could do a lot of things on their own during their own time, perhaps kind of planning for a meeting, collecting data, and then you can use AI tools to create kind of like reports and things you can go over with the millennial side. But I still say a Zoom meeting and a one-to-one, some sort of action is going to be really important as far as the human in the loop. So kind of explain, how do you bring that human in the loop on top of this digital stack?
Yes. And I do think that that's a really good point, because it is still important. And one thing about millennials is that it kind of goes back to the authenticity thing. We like really great advice that's personalized to us, which is something that obviously does require a personal touch, human interaction. So I think what you just said about using technology to gear up for the meeting is really important. Millennials aren't going to want to take the time to sit on the phone every day to give you, one little piece of information. We don't like being tracked down for one little thing. So if you have digital intake forms, digital onboarding forms that can be securely uploaded into a portal, that's amazing. And then at the end of all that, do a 30-minute meeting. Sit down, really find out about the goals the person has, that type of thing. Millennials are also going to appreciate regular check-ins, but not too regular. Quarterly check-ins are a great way to kind of stay on top of this generation, make sure they're doing the right things, let us know, hey, I've got your best interest at heart. Here's some personalized strategies for you to do for the next 3 or 4 months, and then check in again after that. So I think the combination of the occasional digital meeting combined with lots of online uploading, social media. And another way to reach this generation is by social media. If you're posting reels, videos, valuable content on your Instagram and your TikTok, for example, that's another way to engage with this generation without doing one-on-one content, but custom content that really speaks to their pain points and to the things that we're dealing with generationally can be a good way to stay top of mind for millennials?
So would you say they still read newsletters, we know that. They're obviously on social, but perhaps the messaging, you're not just sending a client newsletter, you're also posting on social and connecting with them that way, but the same type of content, covering these life events, these tax tips, whatever, financial advice, whatever we're doing. So how, as far as like the content we're creating to message this audience and their life events, would you suggest creating your own filter for millennial age clients and sending content based on that, segmenting your client database and actually creating a newsletter that has millennial we're pretty sure these are going to fit the millennial age group clients. This is what we're going to send them. How do you go about planning that and organizing it?
Definitely. And we talked a little bit about this in one of our last podcasts. I forget if it was boomers or Gen X, but segmenting your list to people who are that age group is a great way to start sending niche newsletters that are going to resonate with them. Like you said, Lee, millennials do still read newsletters. I have specific newsletters that I read every week, every month, that kind of thing that I've signed up for. So if you're providing great content, we will read. That goes back to the authenticity and transparency. We will sit on the phone and read anything as long as it really is providing value to us. So creating a segment and newsletter that addresses things like, hey, are you looking to send your kids, to college in the next 10 or 15 years? Here's what you need to be doing now in order to not have a financial, roadblock when you get to that point. Are you thinking about buying your first home? That's huge for millennials. A lot of people put off home ownership for various reasons. Are you looking to pay down student loan debt? Here are some great tips, actionable real life tips to help you pay down your student loans so that you can achieve these other financial goals. All those kinds of topics are going to resonate with millennials, and they're all things that would be great content for both social media and a niche newsletter.
So we know everyone's super busy. Obviously, we do a lot of these things for our clients, but let's say you're using a tool like Max AI or ChatGPT or other, what kind of prompts would you write to help you figure out the topics you should be covering, and then actually developing content, whether it be a social post, reels, or actually blog articles or doing a webinar? Like, what would be the prompt, kind of some of the variables and the context you would put into a prompt to get the best outcomes and to be able to create this type of content very quickly?
I always tell people, talk to AI engines as if they are people. So I would start broad. Hey, I'm looking to create a series of content pertaining to millennials. I run a tax and accounting firm. We're looking to help millennials who are interested in tax planning, interested in home ownership, interested in college savings for children who are currently in elementary and middle school, that type of thing. Give it a broad prompt. Once it spits out a little bit of information, hone in, say, hey, okay, that's great. Let's start with a Facebook posting calendar. Give me 30 days worth of posts that are going to relate to millennials. Give me image suggestions and relevant hashtags. Then move on to Instagram. That sounds good. Can you create a similar calendar optimized for Instagram? Same thing, trending hashtags, content that's going to resonate with millennials. Then give it another prompt. Okay, let's take some of these concepts and let's tailor it to a niche newsletter that's going to have additional information that's going to expound on certain topics, whether it's college savings, home ownership, paying down debt, all of those different things. How to have the life you want once your kids are out of school, that kind of thing. Those are all things that millennials, especially elder millennials, are starting to think about. And I think also breaking down content to elder millennials and younger millennials is important because they're at very different points in their lives right now. So you can kind of get a lot of content out of those two different groups. Kind of like we talked about boomers who are not yet empty nesters and boomers who are already in the retirement phase. You have a similar differentiation here with millennials. The ones in their 40s are already kind of starting to think about, okay, what's next? And the ones in their late 20s, early 30s are really in the throes of parenthood, getting out of debt, trying to kind of get to that next step.
I love it. You're calling them elder millennials.
That's the official term. Did you not know that?
I didn't know that, but I'll use it for now on. Thank you.
It's a fun one.
That's a good takeaway. So let's talk about it a little bit. I'm going to shift from the content creation and the way you're positioning, but also perhaps in some of your talking points, studies have shown us that millennials are looking for potential partners or firms they work with or people who share their values, right? So what is perhaps some social impact, some purpose of what your brand is all about. So what your tax accounting firm is all about. How do you communicate that without it feeling like you're forcing it down? It's like, this isn't natural. Are you sharing, you're sponsoring little leagues, you're helping, you're sponsoring the local high school's water polo team, things like that? Or are you doing other things as far as charity work or things that you're showing a social impact or causes that you believe in? How do you integrate that into your narrative and your storytelling that I assume will help move the needle to connect with this audience?
Yeah, this is something I talk with our clients about a lot. A lot of tax and accounting people don't realize how much their outside work can have an impact in securing, especially younger clients. This is important to us. I use a lot of brands that, are involved in nonprofits that I care about, that promote causes that I care about. And I know I'm not alone in that generationally. One of the biggest questions I ask our clients when I'm onboarding them is, what are you passionate about outside of work? What does your firm do? What do you do personally? And I learn a lot about people that way. So what I often do when I'm crafting content is have like a little section at the bottom of their About Us page that says in the community or something of that nature. You can even have a whole page about it on your website if you want to. Not only is this going to help from a UX standpoint and the user experience as people visit your website and they're seeing you outside of work, they're starting to see these things that you're passionate about, but it's also going to help you build a linking structure. If you're involved in a lot of social causes locally, link out to them and then see if they'll link back to you as a major sponsor. So it kind of has a twofold benefit for you as a professional. You're getting that SEO impact from the linking strategy, and you're also getting the UX impact from people in millennial and Gen Z generations in particular, looking at you and saying, wow, I want to align myself with a firm that is aligned with these things I believe in, whether that's a local nonprofit, a national nonprofit, an animal cause, whatever it may be. Those things are really important to us. We want to give our money to people who care about the same things we care about.
That is awesome. And I also see, and what's great is this generation is very entrepreneurial. I love entrepreneurship. I think it makes you wake up in the morning and get excited to do things. And millennials are often, they're freelancers, they are gig workers, they're starting their own businesses. And this creates a huge demand, obviously, for different services, virtual CFO, expense tracking, guidance on business entity selection, business deductions, things like that. What do you see? How should I communicate? Should I position specific offerings perhaps around these type of services? Should I kind of niche or, niche deep, as we call it, into those areas? So like, what is your advice there?
Yeah, I think that's really important. This is actually the most confusing thing about my taxes personally. I'll get like, if I'm doing something on social for like a clothing brand maybe that sends me some clothes, if it's over $600 in gifting, I obviously get taxed for it. So I end up with multiple 1099s plus my W-2 at the end of the year. And if I didn't have tax people to help me, I would be completely lost. And I know, like you said, I'm not the only millennial who ends up with multiple documents at the end of the year where I'm just like, I could never do this on my own. So appeal to that when you're talking to millennials. A lot of us do have side gigs, whether it's a true side gig or just that we're doing some content creation on social that ends up being paid or something like that. Most of us do not just have one source of income. We are doing multiple things, whether it's driving for Uber on top of your W-2 or whatever it is. There's lots going on in millennials' lives that leads to tax implications. So I think you could do a whole series of content about this. Are you a part-time content creator? Are you an Uber driver? Are you a DoorDash delivery person? All of these different things could lead to their own content clusters that position you as an expert for helping millennials with their somewhat complicated tax situations.
I also suggest using, we've talked about storytelling, but actually use real life success stories of other clients. Millennials like to see, like, again, Rebekah just nailed it. You want to put yourself in the shoes of that dream or that outcome, that financial outcome. I think developing content around like true use cases, whether you do case studies on your website, testimonials in some ways kind of resonate there as well. If you're getting clients who leave really detailed, long testimonials about their experience of how you've changed their lives or benefited them, I think that also does a lot for the social proof side that really resonates with this audience. So I think we've covered a lot. I want to go into a little bit about some common mistakes some firms can make or are making when trying to attract millennial clients. Where do you see people stumbling? How do they pivot to stay relevant to this audience?
So I think one thing that's a little bit problematic, I don't know if problematic is the right word, but a lot of people still think of us as very, very young. And we're not all that young anymore. A lot of millennials are approaching middle age. So I think gearing your messaging toward people who have actually experienced some life and not treating us like very, very young children who don't have a lot of financial experience or that type of thing is a pitfall, because I think older generations in particular still look at millennials as the kids. And we're not. We have kids, most of us. A lot of us are, parents ourselves now with mortgages and 401ks and everything that comes with that. So I think remembering that we are older, but also remembering that we've had a very different life experience than a lot of past generations, and keeping things young, keeping things fun, that is important to us. I read this really interesting article the other day about how millennials spent more money on toys for themselves last year than children spent on toys, than we're spent on kids, because we do a lot of collecting, kind of the nostalgia bit. A lot of us are really nostalgic for the 90s, when we grew up. So I think you can lean into that as a tax and accounting professional, and kind of lean into that nostalgia, lean into the fact that we do enjoy a young, fun type of aesthetic still, but remember that we are not children. We are people who have a lot of financial things going on, and there's a really big opportunity there that I think a lot of firms have missed out on, because they're either focused on boomers who hold a lot of wealth, or they're focused on very, very young people, and they're kind of missing out on both Gen X and millennials in a lot of ways, who are really big opportunities.
Yeah, now I as a Gen Xer, I will say it is kids raising kids, but that's okay. It's that's why we want to make sure you guys are going to be okay.
We appreciate that.
Yes. And then a lot of Gen Xers would start arguing with you when middle age starts. So, but I do like the elder millennials. It's something I will use for sure. So, all right, we're going to wrap this up. I think we've covered kind of, who are millennials? How are they different? What resonates with them? Why storytelling and building trust and transparency is important? Why being authentic is so important? And then this really goes into so many pros that just forget to do a bio page, to forget to add personality and their branding and their positioning. It's something we work so hard with our clients to really make them unique, have them stand out. We don't want you to be looked at as a commodity, and we want people to see the value of working with a professional brings versus the whole DIY thing. I think that's a battle that you're going to have with the millennial generation. And the good news is, as they get more and more assets, they start changing their tune. They start realizing, whoa, I did this DIY thing and I just answered a prompt in, a question in TurboTax, and I didn't know I did the wrong answer, and it cost me $10,000 or $20,000. I mean, so at that point they start realizing, whoa, wait a second, I may not know everything. And I'm not going to lean completely on AI to give me all my financial advice. So the human in the loop for tax and accounting services, I think, is as important as ever, specifically when it comes to the millennial side. So hopefully you've gained some value here. And see the opportunities. I would definitely think segment, the imagery, the ages that you're doing, the messaging really is going to help and become a storyteller. And then be able to take these bigger stories into micro doses, like things that they're going to absorb in an Instagram post or a TikTok reel. So those are the things we're hoping you guys are going to start doing more and more. We're seeing it with our clients with some great success. So again, we appreciate you joining us with the growth for another edition of the Growth Minded Accountant. If you have any questions or want to talk about what we talked about today, visit our website, accountingworkspro.com. You can obviously reach out to myself on LinkedIn, Lee Reams II, and I would love to interact with you. But again, until the next podcast, we hope you have enjoyed this. Please share, comment any questions. We appreciate the viewership, and we'll look to see you again soon. Thank you.